Welcome to What Are You Sporting About podcast, a podcast about business, employment, sports, and entertainment to help educate, support, and guide you to your next level. Here's your host, attorney Sivonnia DeBarros.
Hi, everybody. I am back again with another episode of What Are You Sporting About? I am your host, Sivonnia DeBarros, the protector of athletes, also the founder and principal attorney of the S.L. DeBarros Law Firm, where we represent 6- and 7-figure business owners and athletes in business. And look, make sure that you go to my website and sign up to have to get some information about my new book that's coming out. We're going to be talking to athletes around name, image, and likeness. So you want to make sure that you are educated and motivated to your next level. Today, I have a great guest who is with us, the financial quarterback, Mr. Jacob Turner. And just a little bit about him. He's a former top 10 MLB draft pick and MLB player. All right. And after spending more than a decade of playing professionally, he transitioned to help athletes navigate the accelerated financial arcs that come with their careers. He's also the co-founder of JL Strategic Wealth, where he specializes in helping athletes, entrepreneurs, and second-generation wealth build sustainable lifestyles. So welcome to the podcast, Jacob.
Thanks for having me. Great. I appreciate you having me. I know we've connected previously and love your title, Protector of Athletes, and something that I feel very passionately about as well.
And I love your title too, the financial quarterback, because a lot of people don't think about different aspects of life in the team aspect. So how did you come up with financial quarterback?
Yeah, great question. So how we think about it and how I think about the financial industry in general is it's very segmented, the advice that is often given. You have somebody giving investments over here in one corner, and then you have somebody giving tax advice over here, and you have somebody giving estate advice over here, and maybe somebody's giving other legal advice over here. But really having somebody at the center of that picture that's really tying in all those pieces together is really important. So on our end, not only are we managing the investments both in the public and private markets and helping athletes budget and build sustainable lifestyles, but we're also tying in all the other important facets of their team. And I think, as you know, in the athlete space, it's no different than in the business owner space, that these guys are running their own enterprise and that they need to make sure that they have a team around them. So as a financial quarterback, it's much more than just saying, hey, we're going to manage this bucket of money that's sitting over here in the corner and not talk to anybody else. We found a really inefficient way to go about it.
Good stuff. So what got you interested in the financial industry, though? So as you said, and part of your bio is really wanting to help athletes to tackle the financial issues that occur in sports. So is that what prompted you to want to be in this space, or was it something else that that gave you the idea that, hey, I really want to go into finance?
Yeah, great question. So when I got drafted, I was fortunate to have some really qualified people around me that were helping me kind of navigate that journey for me. And it was something that I had a lot of interest in. I like to say I have interest in understanding how the world spins and the economics of everything that comes with that. So I've always had interest in doing it. As I progressed throughout my career, seeing other guys and asking questions around, hey, what are you doing to manage your money? Or, hey, what are you doing to budget? Or, hey, what are you doing when you're buying this house? Or why are you buying this house? And starting asking questions, you would get answers like, well, I have a guy for that. And then you would ask a question that would be kind of one layer deeper from that. And they would say, well, I really don't know what's going on. I really don't know what I'm invested in. I really don't know why I'm invested in that. If my career were to end tomorrow, I don't really know what's next. So obviously through my journey, I have a passion for helping those sorts of people. And I think navigating what I would describe as sudden wealth is something that's really unique in the marketplace. There's a lot of people that are extremely qualified to help people that are great savers that save till they're 60 some odd years old, that they retire. Generally, they have a relatively high financial literacy IQ at that point. And if they've made any financial mistakes previous to that point, they're not really magnified to the same level that when you look at an athlete or even a business owner going to a liquidation event, there's no do-overs for those types of transactions. So making sure that they understand that we can help you from start to finish, and building that strategic plan in place is really what drove me to do what I'm doing now.
Great answer. Great answer. So, and I'm gonna ask you a wild card question because I have to ask my guests this. This is part of the title, but keeping that in mind, what are you sporting about mean to you?
I think what are you sporting about? And I know we talked about a little bit this offline, but to me, I think it means what's important to you that also has to do with the sports industry. And the sports industry is something that has given me a lot of blessings in my life. It's something that I want to give back to. So for me, what am I sporting about? It's helping to not only protect athletes, which is what I know that you're doing a great job of, but really helping to educate and come alongside them. Because I think engagement comes when there's education in that process.
Wow, engagement comes when there's education in the process. That was huge. That's a big statement. That's the takeaway for today. Everybody can go home. No, that was really good. So a lot of athletes, as you know, it's very difficult when it's time to transition. Because there isn't a ton of information or education outside of just the sport. I think now a lot of people are creating different avenues, or now starting to create a lot of education around different aspects to help build a full, well-rounded individual outside of the athletic perspective. So what are some things that athletes should be thinking about when it comes to building wealth or even creating a financial team?
Yeah, well, let me kind of take that question at the beginning and talk a little bit about that transition as athletes move away from the game. I think that transition can start as soon as athletes start in their careers. And what I mean by that is I don't want people to think that their focus shouldn't be on the field. Their focus should 100% be on the field. They have a really short time and a really short window to maximize their earning ability on the field. But I think it's important for athletes to understand, what is my identity? My identity as an athlete, or is my identity as something else? And that's something that I really preach to guys, is helping them understand that you're much more than an athlete, and that you have an opportunity to do some amazing things as an athlete, and that you can have doors that might not open to you in the general population that you can maximize when you are an athlete to help vault you to whatever you're going to do next. So that's how I'd answer that first part of that question. The second part, as far as building wealth for athletes, really what it comes down to is, one, engagement in the process, like we talked about previously, but it's building that strategic plan from day one. It's building a plan that no matter what happens, you know that, hey, we have a plan set in place and we want to do X, Y, and Z as I continue to progress in my career. You can't out earn bad spending habits. So helping them understand that from day one, that there's going to be a budget in place. I think that's probably the most paramount thing. It's a really simple thing, and I think a lot of people struggle with that, because most of the time when you come across a high earner, he says, well, I think a budget's for somebody that maybe isn't earning as much income as I am. And they couldn't be further from the truth when they say that, because a budget's for anybody. Like I said, you can't out earn bad spending habits. So helping them understand that we're going to put a plan in place to help them on their roadmap, whether they play 1, 10, 20 years at whatever sport they're going to be in. When they're done playing, they're able to vault themselves to whatever they are going to do
next. That's a good point, because so let me just ask you this. Do you normally get, or is there pushback when you're saying, hey, we need to make strategic plans around your wealth or your financial goals? Because I don't want to say that it's a long process, but it takes the person through this mind shifting journey. And sometimes I think that is really more so the issue that you're fighting with, is really trying to get people to reevaluate their thinking.
Absolutely. It's definitely reevaluating your thinking. And when I think about that, it's helping not only athletes, but anybody understand that, hey, if I want to spend $50 or $100,000 on this vehicle, what could that $50 or $100,000 do if I decided I want to spend $25 to $50,000 on this vehicle and invest the rest of the money for the long term? So it's helping to educate them in the process, and I think that's one thing that my industry in general has done a really poor job of. What I see a lot is advisors talking to clients in terms that they don't understand, thinking that maybe, hey, maybe they understand that term that I'm talking about. Or on the flip side, saying, I want to be the smartest guy in the room, so I want to talk above this client. And then the client walks away confused, disengaged. They don't want to ask questions because they don't want to feel stupid. And then there's no plan in place because they have no education around it. So I think exactly what you said is really important, making sure that these people understand that we can engage in the process in a way that you can understand it, which will in turn create better results in the end.
That makes sense. So what would be some key features or key things that athletes should look for in a financial agent, representative, or team member when they are now, really trying to build out this team to help them, not just for today, but for longevity, financial sustainability?
Yeah, I actually wrote a good piece on this that speaks to kind of my industry as a whole. There's a lot of people out there that are quote unquote financial advisors, and it could be a world that if you're not understanding of it, you have no idea which way to turn. So what we like to tell guys is the best things that you can do is make sure that one, you find somebody who's fee only. So fee only means that they're able to sit on the same side of the table as you and give you advice and get paid for the advice they're giving, but not get paid for selling you a product. What I mean by that is if you have product A or product B and I'm making a commission selling those products, you have a huge conflict of interest there. So on a fee only model, you don't have near the conflict of interest. The other part of that is making sure that they're a fiduciary, which is a term that I think gets thrown around a lot now in our industry, but it's really making sure that they have the legal obligation to sit on the same side of the table as you, just like you do from a legal standpoint as a lawyer. Unfortunately, in our industry, there's kind of two ways to look at it. You're either a fiduciary or you have a sustainability standard where it's saying this is suitable for this client, but it might not be the absolute best for this client. But it's 80% of the way there. So I'm going to go ahead and recommend it. So those are the two biggest pieces to that. There's obviously a lot of other pieces that go into it, but I think having somebody that's fee only and that's a fiduciary, that's going to help you really build the team of individuals around you and not just manage your money in a bubble is a great place for guys to start.
So how do athletes put on that investigative hat to really be able to cut through the noise and know whether they are in a financial relationship where there could be a conflict of interest based on the interest of the financial agent? They're promoting their interest over the athlete.
Yeah, that's the $1 million question to help these guys understand, help athletes make better decisions by asking better questions. And what I would point you to is there's a group called EduCore that's run by a former financial advisor that's doing great work in terms of what I would call a financial audit for guys. So for any athletes that might be listening to this, what they do is they'll actually come in and do a financial audit for you and give you high-level bullet points of everything that you're doing in your financial life and say, hey, we think what you're using for this is good and what you're using for this is bad. And really what I like about what they do is that they don't have any skin in the game. They're not financial advisors anymore. They're strictly there to help guys audit their financial situation and say, hey, we really think you should go look and possibly explore other options. For people that are just moving into the space, it's really figuring out what questions you need to ask. And one thing that I'm happy to share with anybody that's watching this afterwards is I actually wrote a white paper on financial planning for professional athletes. And it speaks to the 5 questions that you need to answer as you kind of walk through this process. So some of that has to do with who you look to on the financial side, but it also has to look to things like what can you afford personally as you move through this process. So I would say the biggest things are helping guys ask good questions, but it's a world that unfortunately there's a lot of miscommunication. But I think the better questions you can ask, the better answers you can get.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, and being able to ask better questions is going to come from also being educated, right? utilizing the resources that are available to the athletes, and moving away from the pridefulness, because I think a lot of times that keeps the athlete in a situation where they can't truly advance. Because if you go into a room with someone who is extremely bright in terms of what it is that they do, they are an expert in their role. There's no way, like, you can't, in your own mind, you can't think that you're stupid, but some people do, because this person has a completely different training or background and experiences than what the athlete does. So moving away from that prideful type of personality to make sure that you dive deep and ask questions that make sense to you, right? So that you can gain a greater understanding, but then also taking the information that you learn from that to apply it to additional resources that you've seen so that you can make the best decision for you and for your financial future.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that really speaks to the one big question that I would encourage not only athletes, but anybody that's working with somebody in the wealth management space in general is the best question you can ask is, how do you get paid? So how am I paying you as a client of the firm? And when they're recommending a product, asking what the costs of me owning this product are. Because at the end of the day, any investment that you have, you're the owner of that investment. And you need to be really clear on what the costs are. Generally, people don't understand that in the financial services industry, that might be your greatest expense as you move through your life, when you look at what you're paying for financial advice. Now, I think there's a ton of value in the advice that we're able to give clients, but it's also extremely valuable for the clients to be able to say, I know specifically how my advisor is getting paid, and I know exactly what I'm paying for these investments that I own, because you own those investments. And really taking responsibility around that is, I think, a really huge factor.
All right. So, and taking that into account, so there's something called accelerated financial arcs, right? Break that down for me. What does that mean? What does that mean? And what is typically the right set of questions around financial arcs and even managing those types of things?
Yeah. So when we think about the average person that goes to college, graduates, gets a job in corporate America, and then proceeds to climb the corporate ladder for, let's just say, the next 40 years of their life. By the time they're maybe 40, they've maybe made partner. By the time they're 50, they're reaching their maximum earning capacity. And they're going to continue to do that until they're 62 or 65 or 70, or whenever they decide to retire. So their financial arc is kind of like this. It's a slow incline up. So they have some time to figure out on the financial literacy side, hey, like I made this mistake when I was 30, but it didn't make a big difference because I wasn't at my peak earning years. For the clients that we are working with, the financial arc is straight up and then it's straight down. So what I mean by that is, for an athlete, for a business owner, for an entrepreneur that might be going through a liquidation event, you might have been making some sort of steady income. And then in 1, 3, or 5 years, you're going to make all the income you're going to make for the rest of your life. And then the spigot is shut off. So then you say, okay, well, this is great that I got X amount of millions of dollars right now, but how do I incorporate that into my life to make sure that it lasts not 1, 3, or 5 years, but rather your entire life? So that's what we say accelerated financial arcs.
That makes a lot of sense. And if you apply it definitely to the sports industry, the pro sports industry, and you think about these young athletes who are instant millionaires, right? That's right. They go straight, into a vertical, accelerated financial level, but then what is the sustainability around it? So if we are talking to, let's say, collegiate athletes who are about to transition from college and they're not going pro, or professional athletes who are finding themselves in a situation where they're getting ready to transition out of sport. Maybe their contract isn't renewed. I don't know, maybe it's time for them to just hang up the shingle and find something else to do. What would be your advice for what would be next for them? Or how they should tackle that what's next question?
the first way that I would recommend any athlete tackling it, whether it's at the professional level or the collegiate level, is better understanding what they're really good at. I think as athletes, we're inherently aware of things that we're really good at on the field and things that we're maybe not so good at. I think sitting down and really figuring out what are my strengths. I think for any athlete, whether it's a collegiate athlete or a professional athlete, one of their biggest strengths is most likely going to be discipline. They've had to have supreme discipline in their life to reach whatever level they've reached in sport. And then I think the second aspect of that is better connecting with the people that they have around them. If they are at the collegiate level, better connecting with the people that might be connected with the school that are really successful outside of sports. Because those are people that want to take meetings with the top athletes at those schools. They would love to grab coffee with you. They would love to grab lunch with you and kind of talk about, hey, what do you want to do next? There's a lot of people that want to hire athletes, one, because they're extremely competitive. Their foot's always on the gas, so to speak, and they're extremely disciplined. And I think it's no different in the professional space. You might have more doors that could be open to you, but understanding that you can start building out your network and start building relationships with people that might be able to help you transition right now, whether you are going to be done playing next year or in 5 years.
I agree. And especially for college athletes or college students, period, right? I think that's the perfect time to network with your peers. I mean, you have absolutely no idea where people will end up. But you've already, if you take the time and you really cultivate those relationships post college, you have no idea what type of collaborations you could create, that could lead to financial longevity. So I 100% agree to that. And especially for the pro athletes who are trying to transition, networking is just key. So one thing that I put in my my book, What Are You Sporting About, is how to network the right way, making sure that you're finding people who are like-minded, not in the sense that you have to have the exact same interests, but like-minded in the sense that you have a common goal, you have a common purpose, and you can help to build each other up and help to inspire and motivate each other to move to that next level. So I think that's a key point that some athletes are missing, to help them to be able to create and keep revenue.
Yeah, I think most athletes have been so caught up in what they're doing, whether it's collegiate or professional, that maybe they don't even know. When you say networking, it's like, well, what do you mean? And really, to me, networking is just building relationships with people. It's helping to connect people. It's helping to add value for what they're doing in your business. I think if you go about it with that perspective, that that value will then be returned to you at some point down the road. But I think going in with the wrong perspective is the wrong way to do it. You're looking to build relationships because, like you said, there's no telling where you're going to end up. There's no telling what bridge you might want to cross down the road. And the more bridges that you can build with people, the more you can help them in their businesses, and the more that they can help you in your journey.
Absolutely. And I'm going to tell you, I used to dread networking. People say, oh, come to this networking event. I'm like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm going to say to these people. But when you change your mindset around networking, you are absolutely correct. It is building relationships. And you're not going to click or mesh with everybody. Okay. We know it. But when you approach it from the perspective of, I am going to build or create a new relationship with someone, it feels so much better. For me, I see it as building my family, or I'm finding my family. And it's so beautiful because now you can make real meaningful relationships that go deeper. And especially if you can find a common purpose of what it is that you do or want to do and what someone else is doing. Now you can find ways to serve that person, and then they also want to serve you. And so that helps to further cultivate that relationship.
Yeah, you really hit the nail on the head there. It's just really about those relationships and finding what other people are passionate about. It's been so refreshing to me just to find so many people that are passionate about similar things to myself. And you can do so much, even in a virtual world that we live in with Zoom and everything else. Even connecting semi face to face on a Zoom meeting, in my mind, it just gives such a relational aspect of like you get a better idea of like who the person is and how they feel about X, Y, or Z, or whatever you guys are having your discussion about.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let me ask you this. What is at least one or two takeaways that you want to leave with athletes as they either start now as a new athlete entering into sports or transitioning out of sports?
Yeah, the first thing that I would tell athletes, there's no time better than right now to start planning for what you think you might want to do in the future. That does not mean that your focus does not need to be on the field. That does not mean that you're going to be done playing in 1 year. That means that you are saying that at some point I'm going to be a former athlete, and that at some point I'm going to be a former athlete a lot longer than I was a current athlete. And the other thing that I would tell athletes is that use the brand that you created. Every athlete has a brand, whether they realize it or not, whether they have social media or not. If you are the 25th guy on a major league roster, you have a huge brand. If you are the last player on the Clemson football team, you have a huge brand. If you are the best player on your high school baseball team, you have a brand. Use it. And connect with people that you enjoy and start building those relationships.
And where can these athletes or anyone really who wants to have a financial quarterback, someone to keep them accountable to their plans, where can people find you?
So you can find our company website is jlswealth.com. And then we have our YouTube page, which is JL Strategic Wealth, where you'll find a cool video that kind of speaks to those financial arts that we talked about. You can also find me on LinkedIn, and you can find me on Instagram. I'm at Jacob_JLS, where I post cool pictures of my kids and things of that nature.
Awesome. So you guys have heard it from Jacob Turner, the financial quarterback. I'm so happy that he came on to the podcast to talk about some of the issues around financial goals, aspects, strategic planning, tackling the question of what's next, but also diving deep to ask the questions that are going to make a difference in hiring a financial agent and finding someone on your team. So thank you so much, Jacob, for coming on to the platform to discuss these issues with us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure, and I'm excited to continue to see what you do as a protector of athletes. And I just love that title. I can't say it enough.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And listen, guys, make sure that you go and visit our website at prosportlawyer.com so that you can get all the information that you need to be educated and motivated and supported to your next level. Make sure you go out and get our book, What Are You Sporting About? It was a bestseller on Amazon.com. And make sure that you look for our upcoming book that is going to talk about a ton of issues around name, image, and likeness. You can find that at prosportlawyer.com. Again, this is Sivonnia DeBarros, protector of athletes. Until next time, we'll check you later. Ciao.
Thanks for joining us this week on What Are You Sporting About podcast. Make sure to visit our website, prosportlawyer.com, where you can subscribe to the show in iTunes, Stitcher, or whatever your favorite platform is, so you'll never miss a show. And while you're at it, if you found value in the show, we'd appreciate a rating on iTunes or iHeartRadio. Or if you'd simply tell a friend about the show, that would help us out too. If you like the show, you might want to check out our book, What Are You Sporting About? Attorney Sivonnia DeBarros is available for private consulting at sldebarros.com. And remember, we're here to educate, support, and guide you in your journey to success, because we're all sporting about something.